Right now, Israel is engaged in a war with Hamas to the south in Gaza, and also with Hezbollah to the north
Hmm.
in Lebanon. What do you feel toward this general situation?
Um, it's so complicated because Israel does have a right to defend itself against Hamas. I mean, 2,000 people were killed, including children. Like any nation would do some sort of response, but like it's been a year at this point. Hamas is not going to go anywhere at this point. In fact, probably going to be amplified in their messaging because of the destruction that Israel has caused to Gaza. And like it's already being seen with Hezbollah and their increased rocket attacks and Iran's response to them. So it's not a smart idea. They should just make peace right now.
What terms would you think would be most beneficial to both sides?
What do you mean by terms?
Like for ending the conflict? Are you
Ending
talking
all
about a
terms. Okay.
ceasefire?
I would say a ceasefire to begin with.
Okay.
Like at least a short-term ceasefire, like a month, I would say.
Do you think that's feasible between the two entities right now?
No, it's because of their political structures. Like Netanyahu, he's just in it to survive against his corruption charges. He wants to stay in power to survive that. Hamas, they don't care about civilian casualties. They just hide behind them and let Israel take them as well as the civilians out.
What do you think is the biggest obstruction to getting a ceasefire?
Ooh, good question. I think Netanyahu, to be honest. Like he's so adamantly against any kind of ceasefire, even from the United States. He's completely refused anything that we put to him. Actually, it may not be Netanyahu himself. He may be more willing to, but his cabinet is probably what is forcing him to keep doing these things. Like the invasion of Lebanon, I don't think that would have happened if the insane far right cabinets that he has was so, what's the word? Was so persuadable to him because of how much power they have at the moment.
We could talk about that too in regards to the United States. So, the United States has donated billions and billions of dollars, also military weapons. We've
Hmm.
shot down their missiles coming at them from Iran. Do you think Israel would carry out this war differently if they were using more of their own money?
Um, I don't I don't think so. I don't think they would do that. I think with the US, we should put some conditions on our weapons that we send to them. There should be more mechanisms to make sure civilians are out of harm's way when we do use them. And there shouldn't be any civilian casualties, even if the strategic objective, like taking out a Hamas official, is met. You know, I think for the Iron Dome, if we provide any like missiles or technology to protect Israel from foreign actors like Hamas or Iran, I think it's worth it because, well, we're protecting other people's lives at that point, isn't taking them.
So, let me ask this question. You, as a taxpayer, are you comfortable with your tax-paying dollars going over to fund the Israeli war effort?
Hmm. It's a hard question. I don't pay that much in taxes right now, but I do understand where people come from, that they don't want their tax dollars to be used to kill other people, you know?
Gotcha. So, with Iran in this whole soup, there's been a lot of assassinations of high-ranking officials in Hezbollah and Hamas from Israel, and some of those have happened in Beirut, Tehran, and even in Damascus.
Hmm.
Do you feel like this war is widening?
I absolutely do feel like it's widening. I think it was super unnecessary to kill, especially the Iranian officials. Like, I get it. Iran is state-sponsored terrorism. They're like truly one of the worst governments in the world at this point. But it just crosses a boundary of international civility, if you could call it that. That people who shouldn't be killed are being killed now. It's massive escalation of things that will only turn out very poorly for Israel in the future.
If this war is escalating, do you see the United States getting involved?
No, I don't think the United States will get involved any more than just providing weapons to Israel and other people on the ground, like maybe the Kurds, something like that. But the U.S. won't get involved in any significant way. Maybe I take that back, like air support, but not ground troops
Okay,
at the most. I feel.
that's interesting. I haven't heard that. Air support. That's an interesting one.
Like to bomb like
Yeah,
specific
I see what you're
targets.
saying. Yeah,
Not dogfights.
I
or
understand
anything.
you. I understand. Um, what do you think should be the biggest change in U.S.-Israeli foreign policy?
I don't know if there can be much change at this point. The United States changed their embassy to Jerusalem in I think 2018. We can't really take the hundreds of millions, probably billions at this point, back from that decision to move it there. In other ways, like the U.S. should provide conditionality to weapons, as I said before. Um, yeah.
Why do you think they haven't?
I don't think I haven't. I don't know. I think it's because I'm not entirely sure on this, but the Israel lobby is really powerful. Two progressive Democrats were taken out in their primaries because of the Israel lobbying efforts.
Yeah, what was that? Jamal Bowman was one of them.
I think so. It was one of, I know for sure it was someone in the Bronx who was
Yeah, with
lost their primary.
a lot of money involved in that
Yeah, it
race.
was the biggest primary spending ever, I think.
Yeah, so you do see money playing a role in this, especially foreign money coming from AIPAC, the Israel lobby. Do you see that? Would you call that corruption?
I think any kind of like lobbying efforts, like through money, is corruption. Like FEC versus Citizens United, like terrible decision. One of the worst decisions by a Supreme Court ever, in my opinion. Like any kind of money being donated specifically to a candidate for political purposes is not good at all.
Would you say that Israeli interests are being adhered to more by politicians than the actual will of the United States people?
The will of the U.S. people. I saw a poll where most, I think about 52% of Americans were somewhat against how Israel was responding. So I do think that the U.S. government isn't fully respecting the will of the people at this point. Let me think.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
Yeah, there's tons of people, like especially in the Democratic Party, who don't want to see so much money being spent on Israel. It really does seem like politicians aren't listening to the people as much as they really should be.
It's really interesting. Like, you see usually the chamber is so divided, right, between the Republicans and the Democrats on whatever issue. So there's this sort of gridlock. But when it comes to Israel, a lot of things get done.
It's a shocking amount of things. It's even more than Ukraine at this point, and Ukraine is like probably the most black and white war at this point.
It's really interesting. I guess I'll ask you just one last question. So, where do you get your news from?
Where do I get my
And then
news from?
how often do you check that source? And what role does social media play in your information
So
consumption?
in terms of social media, I don't really look at social networking sites like Twitter where people can just let their raw thoughts out. I get my news sources from like YouTube. It's this place called TLDR News. It's this British YouTube channel. They are left-leaning, but I do feel that they do provide unbiased, or like the facts that they present are as unbiased as possible. I get a lot of I do listen to podcasts a lot from NPR and the New York Times, which are both left-leaning. I don't think it's that like a specific propaganda from either side. What else is there? Oh, I try to read like news sources online, like the Washington Journal, Wall Street Journal, Wall Street Journal. I heard that's right-leaning, but I feel like that's pretty centrist to me.
And then, so social media does not play a heavy role.
I hope it doesn't.
Okay, cool.
But there's
that's
always
very
the
interesting.
subconscious, the
absolutely.
subconsciousness on my
What
part.
platforms of social media are you on?
It's like YouTube and Spotify, where I get my podcast from.
Okay. So on the YouTube, is it you said TLDR and a few others. Um, are there any other outlets like news type groups that you listen to? For example, like there's a left leaning The Young Turks.
No, I don't listen to Young Turks.
Okay.
I think they're just pure left wing propaganda.
Okay, really?
Like, also, I think one of their main officials, not officials, like one of the main executive sons, Hassan Piker, I don't listen to him either. He's incredibly, incredibly biased against Israel and for Palestine.
Have you heard of Breaking Points?
Breaking Points? No, I have not.
The Breaking. Okay, so it's a different platform to where there's two hosts, and one is
Oh
left leaning.
yeah,
one's
I've heard of
right-leaning.
that. Like one guy is like right leaning, another girl is left leaning.
Do you see that as like a good way to look at the news?
To like have both perspectives like argue it out.
Just kind of like giving their input on how this could be seen as like a left issue or a right
I think
issue.
it's a good idea, but unfortunately, like my preferences and what I want to watch. I don't think that lines up
Okay,
with what I like to see.
I got you. That's it. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.